Welcome back to Garage Time. Today is another milestone day. I am going to be adding the brackets to the front footwell area for the removable door bars, and that is the last of the welding I have planned for this car. Yes.
Garage Time.
Well, I should say the welding for the tub. So there's going to be more customization on things like the rear access panel, the brakes, the gas tank, all kinds of bolt-on parts are going to get some customization and welding. But the welding for the tub and what is preventing me from painting is going to be done. Okay, back at the car, you can see there's the dashboard. If you saw last week's video, you know I painted a little bit here. A little premature, but I wanted to motivate myself sometimes. I need to kind of get ahead. I'm going to be adding a bracket there to accept a removable door bar that protects the driver and passenger and also provides a little bit more structural rigidity. So if you remember from a few videos ago, I added this bracket here to the roll bar, and that is the removable attachment point for the door bar. Let's get going. So I measured the size of this plate. It's 12.5 by 5 centimeters, which is about 62.5 square centimeters. That is not 120 square centimeters that's required for the main hoop, but it is the amount required for the backstays. So because this is not a full cage, I'm not so sure that 120 square centimeters is really needed here. I think the requirements would be similar to like a backstay because it's a removable door bar, which is 60 square centimeters. I think I'm gonna target between 60 and 120 square centimeters. I can make this slightly larger if I move this edge out just a little bit. I followed this line here, which is part of the longitudinal, but there's another line right down here. Might be hard to see with the black paint, but there's another line here where I can move this edge out just a little bit. Also, I forgot to mention, I've seen some cars where they plate this entire area, this whole corner here, right over the heater outlet. That stiffens this area a little bit more. My opinion on that is that this area is already much stiffer than this section, and I think the addition of the door bar is going to far exceed whatever might be attained by putting a plate over that. So I'm just going to keep mine relatively small, but I do like what others have done in that area. I just don't think I'm going to go that far. Okay, here's version 2 sitting right on top of version 1. So clearly it's bigger. It extends out to this lower longitudinal line like I mentioned, and it's going to have a kind of radius gusset here so it ties into that longitudinal. As luck would have it, I am all out of the proper 11 gauge sheet metal for this last bracket on my car. Here's another supply up here. This is all just a little bit too thin or aluminum or just not the right stuff. So I'm on my way to the metal store. I'm working down here on the floor again. Unfortunately, I just want to do this one bend, and rather than putting it right in the brake as is, I made this sacrificial piece. This is the same gauge material, and I'm going to put it on the upper die so it has a less sharp bend radii or bend radius. When I go to squish this piece, it's going to put a more gentle bend in it. And the reason for that is that where it mates up to the car, that area of the inner sill or longitudinal has a radius to it. So if I can put a gentle bend in this, it'll make it easier when I go to weld it in. It's going to follow the car just a little bit better. So I'm going to try this. It's probably going to take a little bit more force, but I'm going to try to bend it this way. Okay, sure enough, it did put a much more gentle bend in it. You can see on both sides, on the inside too. It was hard to gauge where to bend because the line is only so wide. I probably should have done a double line, but it's close enough. I can kind of trim the outside edges because this was cut a little long. So now it's just a matter of fitting it into the car. Okay, I made some marks on this part where I need to kind of dial it in just a little bit more. So I am going to use my bench grinder to kind of round some of these corners off, and maybe the die grinder to get inside here. This whole edge here needs to be trimmed down too. So got to remove more material as expected. Okay, I think I have this piece trimmed how I want it. Kind of blends in with the shape that's already there. Fully welded in, I just got to make the top hat. I'm going to switch to the TIG welder and then I'm just going to fuse this edge together so I don't have a lot of buildup on it. Just finished welding that cap on top. And I haven't ground it down or anything, but it looks pretty nice. It's kind of radiused with just the welding. And so now this side is done. Let's see if the door closes. Okay, I've just folded this template the other way so I can work on the other side. I want to cut this one out and get the other side welded in before I make the door bars, just so that the welding on the car is done. I hope to have time to get at least one of the door bars done today, but we'll see.
Yeah! Woo!
That is it. That little section was the last section to weld on the actual car. Like I said before, there's going to be welding, like the door bars, the removable door bars, they'll need to get the brackets on the end and stuff. So I'm not fully done welding, but to me, this is a milestone. If you've been watching since the beginning, you'll know this project has had extensive modifications. Number one, it's a 74 that makes it look like a 73, so it's backdated, has longer fenders, longer hood, all that stuff has been changed. It has these RS flares, those aren't stock. Tons of chassis strengthening modifications, the roll cage. The list goes on and on. Seat mounts, engine bay modifications, lots and lots of stuff. It required a lot of welding. This is more than the typical kind of car restoration. So thank you for sticking with me. Things might go faster from now on. Who knows? Time for a status update. I have this plate here. This is 3/16 plate, and it is just bolted in place with 2 bolts. This middle hole here is for the vent. I'm going to be adding a tube to go from this lower mount. This plate will be removable with these 3 bolts, and then it's going to extend up to this mount up here, which I've also put in a plate. This plate's not finished, but I have it match drilled. I use those transfer punches to get the holes precision aligned. There's not even any slop in this right now. These holes are very, very close. And the tube is going to just span, this plate down to this plate. And to get started, I'm just going to use a straight bar, and I can always change the shape of the bar later. But right now, I just want to get this a straight bar, which is the strongest, and hopefully I can still get in the car. I slotted this tube here on both sides so that this plate can go inside here, like so. I'm going to have to hammer that in. Here's a quick look how it's going. I've trimmed this long on this side. It's just sitting inboard of the lower bracket that I was just installed. That magnet's kind of holding it there. And then on this side, this is just kind of held in with, well, those bolts are holding the plate in, and then the tube's just sitting there with some friction on it. And I got to redo some of this. Ignore this corner here, that's going to get trimmed away. But the slot is too long on this side and too short on this side, so I can't have that big hole in there. I am going to redo the slots so this hole goes away. So I'm just going to open up the bottom side, slide the tube this way, and then trim the ends. That'll make it fit a little bit better, and then I can tack weld it in place, and then also over here mark it to trim it to the new plate. Cutting it very conservatively here. Definitely measure twice, cut once. I just finished TIG welding these plates onto the tube. That's the forward half. And then back here, I also trimmed this piece here to look like a rocket, but this is welded from both sides. So let's see if it still fits in the car. Hope it does. It still fits. I got 2 of the bolts in down here, and that looks good. And then up here, I don't have the right bolts, but they're in, and it's in on the shoulder portion, so this is a good fit between these two. I'm going to draw that together tight, and also I'm going to add in those little plates that create the locking feature on this intersection here. So I need to put those plates in. But right now it's fitting, and it looks like it's supposed to. Let's see what it's like to climb in. I don't know, it's gonna probably take some practice. Having a handle here or here is definitely gonna be helpful. This bar is still a little hot, actually. Next week, I'm gonna finish building the driver's door bar and then check back. I'm gonna be doing the torsional rigidity tests again. If you remember, I did torsional rigidity tests when I did the seam welding on the front trunk area, and that resulted in like an 18% increase in torsional stiffness. And then I repeated that test again multiple times when I did the front strut brace. And I determined that the single segment bar across the top does actually nothing for torsional rigidity, but it does do something when you include the diagonals. And so I repeated the test. I think it was about a 10% improvement with those diagonals in place. And those brackets are available now that you can include diagonal bars. I'm selling those if you're interested. So I am going to repeat the test 2 more times, one with the half cage only, and then in the half cage, you've seen it, it's secured up to the B pillars and stuff. And then I'm going to be doing it again with the door bars installed. So leave a comment below. Tell me what you think the cage is worth and what you think the door bars are worth in terms of incremental chassis stiffness or torsional rigidity. So please put your comments below on what you think that might be, and I'll see you next week. Cheers. What do you guys think? A high-speed cup holder?